Brian's aircraft was shot down near the Cambodian border. Unable to eject, he was severely burned in the crash and was given little chance for survival. He spent 1 year in military hospitals and endured 15 reconstructive surgeries. After countless hours of physical therapy, Brian surprised his doctors and returned to flying jet aircraft. Brian went on to become an airshow demonstration pilot, a Top Gun instructor, and culminated his Air Force career by flying the nation's premier spy plane, the SR-71. Brian flew covert missions for 4 years under President Reagan and was the pilot who photographed the Libyan terrorist camps in 1986. Only 93 Air Force pilots ever flew the SR-71, still the fastest plane ever built. When Brian retired from the Air Force, he pursued his writing and photography interests. He is well known today for his aviation books, colorfully illustrated, and his own photography, as well as his highly acclaimed nature photography. He was the first man to write a book about the SR-71 entitled Sled Driver, and is now the single most popular book worldwide on the plane. Brian is the Spirit of Freedom Award winner and has appeared on the History Channel and was recently inducted into the Air Force Legends Hall of Fame. He owns Gallery 1 in California, where his photography is on display. So please welcome Brian Shul.
Thank you. That's my attention step. Thank you for all of you for coming. We've done this 4 years in a row, and every year the crowd is bigger. This is every year, and I'm just blown away by that, and I'm happy to do it. It's the last talk I do every year. I've done 38 talks this year, so if my voice sounds a little hoarse, it is. But I'm happy to come down here each year, and we have such an enthusiastic, great crowd. There's a little bonus you get. We never do this, but I'm going to let you ask questions at the end for just a few minutes. So many people have really great questions we never think of that remind me of other things sometimes. So be thinking of your question as I'm talking. It's a tradition every year. And we get some great ones, and we get some pretty bad ones too. But we're hoping this group really rises to the occasion. Now, I don't want you to confuse me with anyone that's famous or important. What I am is the luckiest guy you will ever see at a podium. And when I'm done with my presentation today, I think that you are going to agree with me on that. Now, before I start, I know what a lot of you are thinking also. How can a fighter pilot possibly be a keynote speaker? They can't put two sentences together coherently. We all know that. I just want you to know that I've been doing this for over 25 years. I've worked extremely hard on my vocabulary. And I'll be using some words in today's presentation that are very, very big. I am the luckiest guy in the world. 93 men in history got to fly that jet. And I was the least likely of any of them that would ever get to fly that jet. And I'd like to share a little bit of my story with you today. Now, I did not feel like the luckiest man in the world the day my aircraft was shot down in Vietnam and I knew I was about to die. Young Lieutenant B. Shul's life was going to be over in the next 8 seconds as he impacted the jungle. Couldn't do anything to get out of the airplane. My life was going to be over. What a sobering thought. I clenched my eyes tightly, clenched my fists, and I figured I'd wake up in heaven painlessly. In a flash, it would all be over. And the next thing I remember was a great deal of fire and smoke and heat and flames all around me. And I thought, well, maybe I didn't go the way I thought I was going to go. Quickly realizing I was still alive, I was able to get out of the airplane. If you want heroes in my story, it's the Special Forces people that came to rescue me. And I will tell you, they're my heroes. Got me back on a chopper, got me back to Thailand, and they said, hey, he's not going to make the trip across the Pacific. He's going to die. Send him to Okinawa, put him at the hospital in Kadena, let him die there. We'll ship his body home in a box. And that was the plan for me. They shipped a 9-man burn team out of Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, all the way to Okinawa just for me. Me and that team got real well acquainted in the next 2 months. Mostly I just cursed at them daily. I saw my body go from 180 pounds of raw muscle and steel, as you see today, to 119 pounds. 119. They said if you lose another half a pound, you're going to die. We can't save you. You have to get some food in your body. Well, my body was just failing me. I couldn't do it. I'm an inspirational speaker today. I go all over the world, and this is the hardest part of my whole talk right here. I have to admit to you what a big baby I was and how I gave up and I didn't want to live. I wish I could say how brave, how courageous, and tough I was and got through it all. It'd be a big lie. The reality was I quit. I gave up, and I wanted to die. And sometimes you have to reach rock bottom before you can appreciate the whole journey back. And I had no strength. Please God, just let me die. I'd say that every night. Well, there had to be a turning point to my story, and it was sort of a silly thing, but it has to do with one of the 3 main points that I'd like to get across to you today. Attitude, perspective, and choices. Attitude. I had a bad attitude at that moment, and I needed to change it. And one day I was laying there and I was looking out the 3rd floor window and I could see the kids playing soccer on the field right out there and kicking the ball and playing. And right at that moment, Judy Garland came on the radio singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. What are the odds of that? We had 1 channel, 1 radio. How many of you know the words to that song, Somewhere Over the Rainbow? Anybody? No, you don't. Put your hands down. You think you do. I thought I did. Yellow Brick Road, Kid Song, Wizard Bot. No. That is a very adult philosophical song about daring to dream, about dreams really coming true. And the words of that song penetrated my brain sharper than any scalpel the surgeons were using. And I could look out the window and see the other side of the rainbow and those kids. And I thought, wow, you big baby, you're probably going to die anyway, that's okay, but don't go out quitting. And it reminded me of when I was one of those kids. And I thought, what happened to our fearlessness? How did you come to this point where you just gave up? And I changed my attitude. I knew I probably wouldn't live, or maybe I'd never fly again. They were going to cut these 2 fingers off, they told me. I knew my life would be hell, but it didn't matter. I changed my attitude. And isn't it amazing how the simplest change of attitude can affect the whole rest of your life? Next day they came in with the food, and they could see that I was ready to go. And my body rejected it, wouldn't go down, nothing. I said, no, God, disregard all that, never mind, let the food go down. And it wouldn't. One Navy guy had a sack lunch, his wife had packed him. He thought maybe there's something in here the guy can eat. Nothing, except a small plastic container of cherry Kool-Aid. That cherry Kool-Aid went down real smooth. They ran to the commissary and they got every pack of cherry Kool-Aid they could find. I drank 3.2 gallons of cherry Kool-Aid the first day. I drank 4 to 5 gallons of Kool-Aid for 5 days. I peed real good. They said that's even a better sign. His body has no internal injuries. He had no internal inhalation burns, no broken bones, nothing. He could live. He could make it through this. Little saltine cracker, some bread eventually was added. Next thing you know, I'm on a flight home to Fort Sam, Houston, Texas, and San Antonio, where the big burn center is. Spent a year there. I'm not going to bore you with all that blood and gauze. But I had the attitude now. And they said, you got to do the therapy now. You're going to live, but you can't move your arms and you can't move your fingers. And so now the real hard part starts. You're going to have to go through more pain to get your motion back. And I said, bring it on. I got the attitude now. because I don't want to go through life like this where I can't use my arms and hands. And they said, you know you're never going to fly again. I said, that's fine. I'm going to pretend like I will. And they thought I needed a psychiatrist. But I said, no, because you don't get it. If you pretend that you will, when you were 12 years old, your bike was an F9F Cougar jet speeding through traffic. You weren't a bike. When you think that you can do it, you can do it. And I did my therapy. I did it real good. And one day, a miracle happened. I passed the flight physical. They couldn't flunk me. They didn't cut those fingers off. They built a hinge joint in that one finger. It was so badly mangled, they put a steel pin in there. And they couldn't flunk me on the physical because I could grasp. And if you could grasp, they can't flunk you because you can move the throttles. And he said, I can't flunk you. You're fine. You just look like hell, but you're strong as an ox. Well, there came a day when I got to the top steps of that hospital, and there was a blue staff car waiting to take me back to the Air Force, and I was being discharged. They said they wanted me for 5 years, 2 years of surgery, 3 years of therapy. I was out in 352 days, and I was terrified. I stood there on the top step, 150 pounds, hair falling out, white as a ghost, weak, but I had the opportunity. I was getting a chance to go back and have a second shot at life. And I knew two things very clearly when I stood on the top step. And I'm going to share those two things with you today. And I don't want you ever to forget them. Number one, life is short and it's uncertain. Life is short and it's uncertain. And because it's both, how can we possibly miss the opportunity of each day? Number two, pursue your passion, live your dream, do the thing that makes your heart beat now. Don't wait. Because rule number one, armed with this very simple knowledge, I went back to the Air Force. Air Force that really wasn't ready for me. And I felt like I had been reborn. I felt like I was starting over. I was like a 2-year-old. I'd had a year in the hospital. I was starting over. Makes colonels very nervous having 2-year-olds fly their jets, I will tell you. The Air Force used me in a good way, made me a safety officer, briefed everybody on my crash, the equipment. I became really well known. I was in magazines, and nobody ever returned with this extent of injury. I didn't want to be famous. I didn't want to be in magazines. I didn't really want to be the safety officer. But I was so thrilled to be back. And I was like starting over. I was like a little kid. I was on the first A-10 squadron. I was on the first A-10 air demo team. I flew A-7s, flew F-5s, teaching at Top Gun. And one day, because I had this new fearless attitude, I said I'd like to fly the world's fastest jet. Now, most of you already know this, but there's a lot of no people in the world. You know, people that are going to tell you why you shouldn't do that, which really means they're afraid to do it. But you need to step over those people and shove them to the side and just kind of step on their face as you go by them. You shouldn't do that. And they said I shouldn't do that because you need to wear an astronaut spacesuit to fly at 90,000 feet. And you need to take an astronaut physical. And if you flunk any part of that physical, you will never fly again. Now, I was 12 years old. I was 12 in my second life when I came to this moment. When you're 12, you go, yeah, that's true, but what if I can pass and do it? What if I can do the thing? Wouldn't I miss that if I was afraid? 12-year-olds don't have fear. You just do it. You fall down, you skin your knee, you get up and go again. I scored the 6th highest score they ever had on the astronaut physical. The guy said, God, you're just internally so strong. I said, you look like hell. I said, yeah, I get that a lot. I know. So I'd like to share with you today, briefly, the adventures of a 12-year-old flying the world's fastest jet. Oh yeah, I got the job. For those of you that do not know what this airplane is, please excuse yourself immediately. This is the SR-71, the world's fastest, highest flying aircraft ever built. This was your guardian of freedom for 25 years, served 6 different presidents, did more to affect and win the Cold War, and changed foreign policy of this nation than you can possibly imagine. This jet would cruise at 2,000 miles an hour at 90,000 feet. I could read your name tag if you're standing outside. No weapons on the plane, 107 feet long, carried 16,000 gallons of fuel, which you'd burn through in about an hour and a half. You are doing a mile every 2 seconds, or a mile every second and a half. If you went hunting with your .30-06 rifle, the bullet exits the muzzle at 3,100 feet per second. This jet would cruise in a climb 3,200 feet per second. Not only the world's fastest, highest flying air-breathing jet, it was also the most elegant, beautiful airplane ever built. A crew of 2, pilot and navigator. Man in the front had the stick, the view, he flew. The guy in the back had no way to fly the airplane, had his head down. This was the airplane that gave way to no other jet. Built of titanium to withstand the 950-degree Fahrenheit heat that builds up at 3 times the speed of sound. Oh yeah, we're cruising at Mach 3 like you're doing 65 miles an hour in your car. I met Chuck Yeager one day and I said, Chuck, what's the big deal? You only did Mach 1. Come on, it's just 1. He did not laugh. Now, Chuck Yeager is the greatest pilot that ever lived. And I know that to be true because he told me. I know Chuck, it's okay. This aircraft was so dynamically different than anything else that had ever been built. But it was used strictly as a spy plane, just as reconnaissance. They only built 50 total Blackbirds, only 35 of the reconnaissance model. This is the spacesuit you had to wear, 2 totally different cockpits. You had to learn to work in concert with your backseater, so they teamed you up with a navigator, and the 2 of you flew every mission together, so that you could learn to communicate. 1 year of training before they turn you loose on real missions. First time I got in the jet, I said, whoa, no guns, no bombs, no rockets. Felt kind of naked. I thought, well, at least there must be a camera switch for me to flip on somewhere. Nope, not one camera. Walter had all the secret stuff, all the cameras, all the comm jamming, all the navigation in the back seat. My job was to keep the pointy end forward. I will say that getting used to the space helmet took a little bit. And the Air Force was so funny. They never had anyone come back to fly with so much scar tissue. I have a lot of scar tissue. Well, guess what? Between you and me, scar tissue is a good thing when you're pulling G's because the blood pools in the scar tissue, giving you a built-in G suit to where I had a higher G tolerance in the A-10 than the other guys did. We didn't know this until, I started flying. But scar tissue looks like you're fragile and you're injured and you're wounded and you probably shouldn't ought to be flying in that. So they said, well, you're going to be breathing 100% oxygen all the time now in that space helmet for 5-6 hours, and you got that scar tissue thing going on. And I look at them and I go, hey, I went into surgery 15 times and they were giving me 100% oxygen every time, so I think it's gonna be okay. And it was. But the no people are everywhere, and as any good 12-year-old, you need to leap right over them. Now, I will tell you that it was a little different. When you're a fighter pilot, you can take your mask off in flight, scratch your face, wipe sweat out of your eye. If you're a Navy pilot, pick your nose or whatever it is they do, they're fine. But now you're entombed for 5 or 6 hours. You get sweat in your eye, too bad. Man, that itch is going to be there, and it's nerve-wracking. They also said, watch what you eat before you go. If you eat a gassy breakfast, the higher in elevation you go, the more the gases expand in your body. So I was a new guy, and they were playing with me a little bit, and I had my first 5-hour mission. They said, Brian, have the ham and cheese omelet before you go. In fact, put extra cheese on there because the protein will be good for you in that 5th hour. And I thought, well, that makes sense. Cheese, protein, what could go wrong? Passing 55,000 feet in the climb that day, I thought I was going to give live birth in the cockpit. At 71,000 feet, when relief came, I very tearfully realized just how self-contained that entire environmental system was. Here's me and Walter Watson. Walt Watson was the only black officer in Air Force history, the only African American in Air Force history to be a part of this prestigious program. We are best friends to this day. He was the most brilliant engineer you could have ever wanted to have in that back seat. He was the original Dilbert, and you needed a guy like that back there. And we were a great team. And right at that same time in the 80s, all those Lethal Weapon movies with Mel Gibson and Danny Glover came out. People were saying, it's you guys, yeah. A little side note, this is the first group audience I can announce this to. You're getting a first headline report here. You heard in my intro that I was very proudly elected into the Air Force Legends Hall of Fame about 6 years ago. I was very proud of that. I was shocked. Means your picture hangs in the Pentagon and everything. Walter was just selected this year, and in May, he will be inducted into the Legends Hall of Fame. He had quite a career of his own. That makes Walter and I the only SR-71 crew in history to have both members in the Legends Hall of Fame. We're very proud of that. We thought, wow, that's insane. Now, let's just face it, it's a lot more fun being in the front seat. You have your hand on the stick, you have a view. So here we are getting ready to fly a long mission, and if you look closely at my spacesuit, it has kind of a happy face on it. Because it's good to be in the front seat. Walter, not so much. Now, we only flew out of 3 locations around the globe. We had 2 jets in Okinawa, 2 jets in England, and a dozen airplanes at Beale Air Force Base in Marysville, California. That's it. That's it. I was out of the country 6 months out of the year, rotating 6 weeks at a time to each location. This is Okinawa, Kadena Air Base. We're getting ready to go up to North Korea. Sonic boomed their little shorts off. This airplane carried a double sonic boom. So you heard it twice. Ronald Reagan loved that. One day the commies were having a big conference up in North Korea, and they invited all the bad guys, the Chinese, the Russians, the Vietnamese, the Koreans. They didn't invite us. Ronald Reagan said, have Brian and Walter take off out of Kadena, head on up to Korea, and do a little figure-8 butterfly pad. We're going, what the heck are we doing? We have photographed the entire peninsula in the first 4.5 minutes. It was Ronald Reagan's way of every 4.5 minutes, sonic booming their little coffee cup off the desk. Just to let them know that we know you're there, and now you know we're here, and you can't do a thing about it. Over 4,500 missiles were fired at this jet in 25 years. Not one piece of one was ever hit. You got to lead me by 35 miles. Little footnote to history here, you may not realize behind the jet here is the Kadena Marina, where the Navy has a little officers club, and people are windsurfing and sailing and learning how to windsurf. And rumor has it, and I don't know how true this is, that some SR-71 pilots on takeoff would suck the wheels up 10 feet off the deck in full burner, go ripping across that marina, knocking windsurfers over. And I think that's just a rumor, personally. Okay, I love this picture. You might say, time-life photography. Look at that. You will never, ever be on an active runway with that jet doing an engine run. Look at that nose strut leaning over, running up 1 engine at a time. You're never, ever going to see that again. That picture was taken by a 12-year-old that didn't have a clue what the word aperture on his camera meant. Okay, let's go back and review. Life is short. Life is uncertain. Number 2, pursue your passion. Live your dream now. Don't wait. My passion, one of my hobbies, was photography. I was teaching myself photography back in the 70s and 80s, and I was reading books, and I had my little Nikon F3 and my roll of 36 Kodachrome and manual lenses, and God was just in heaven. Well, then they mated me with the most elegant aircraft ever built. You think I wasn't going to want to take a picture? No photos allowed, no cameras, top secret, top secret, top secret. That's for the adults. The photographs that you're seeing here today represent the world's rarest collection of SR-71 photographs anywhere in the world. That's why my books are so rare. You can never get these pictures again. These are all my own photographs. Now, it wasn't totally illegal. You could get permission. The colonel had to sign off. The chief of security had to sign off. It's a big pain. You had to go through a lot of paperwork. But they would do it, but then they would say, you already have a picture or two. You want another one? And I'd go, well, you've already eaten ice cream once. Do you want another one? Come on, yeah. And I was relentless. And as a 12-year-old, that's how you are. And this picture speaks so much to me about that attitude thing I was talking about. Now, sitting in the mobile car with the colonel, we're watching this engine run. It's vibrating up through the tires of the vehicle. He looks over, he said, what's that camera doing on the seat? You know you're not supposed to have a camera here. And I go, huh? What? Camera? Oh. And I think really fast. I said, you know, Colonel, if you had a picture of that in your office, you'd be the only guy in the Air Force who would have something like that. And I never saw his lips move, and I never saw him look at me, but I distinctly heard, you have 10 seconds. I can still feel the cold concrete runway to this day on my knee as I got down and fumbled with that Tamron zoom lens, trying to get the wingtips in a difficult shaped airplane. In the picture, I took 2 shots, 10 seconds, leaped back in the car, boom, that jet took off. I will never be in that position again the rest of my life. Came home 3 weeks later, looked at the slides, and ooh, there was one. Now that's not to say, look at me folks, what a great photographer. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And the point is, I didn't miss the opportunity. You don't have to be the best, you don't have to know everything. If you're there in that moment, you aren't getting those moments back. You can buy a new camera, you can get a new job, you can make more money, but you will never get that moment back on the runway in England on a cold November day and get that picture. And every time I see it, it makes me proud to know that I was a 12-year-old twice. If you never heard one of these jets take off, your life's incomplete, I'm sorry. It was a sound that you didn't hear as much as feel as it vibrated your entire body. Climbing out over Susanville, Mount Lassen in the background, we're in a T-38 Chase aircraft here. It was a beautiful airplane to follow along. I don't want to make any Cessna drivers feel bad here today, but from brake release to 26,000 feet, leveling at 450, 3 minutes, 51 seconds. I think that's about 3 days in a Cessna, I'm not sure. Now, if you're going to go this fast, you're going to burn a lot of gas, and you're going to do this 2 to 5 times on a mission. Now, this isn't too bad in a nice sunny day, straight and level. You try this at night, in a turn, in turbulence, in a storm, with lightning in your face. They don't pay you enough. Had one of the most difficult things I ever did in my entire Air Force career, air refuel at night in this airplane. Because you're taking on 65,000 pounds of gas. You're changing your gross weight by 65,000 pounds. The center of gravity's changing. You're slipping off the boom. You have to tap one afterburner just to stay on the boom, so you're flying sideways those last 15,000 pounds. You try this at night, in a turn, in the weather, in turbulence. It is not fun at all. On my days off, I'd get permission to go up on the tanker. They'd say, we'd love to have you, come on. I said, I could get some pictures. And my buddies would go, what is wrong with you? It's your day off. Why would you want to fill out all that paperwork, take off 4 hours early, orbit out there for 2 hours, wait for 15 minutes of excitement, and then drone all the way back, get a little air sick back there with the boom operator looking backwards, and why? What a pain. And I'd look at them, and I'd go, pain? Pain is sitting in a burn ward on a Saturday. They're ripping skin off one part of your body to sew it on another part. Now you have a whole new wound you didn't even have, and you're sitting under a heat lamp to dry out the blood while people are out playing baseball, eating hot dogs. That's pain. This is living. We're the only guys in the world get to be around this jet. How could you miss the opportunity? Now, I didn't say any of those words to them, but I looked at them the way 12-year-olds look at you when you say, you know, you shouldn't do that. Oh yeah, I hear the words. Excuse me, but I have to go do that. And I did. And now today, those same people are calling me saying, can I get a photograph of that to show my grandson what I used to do. I didn't know I was going to be a speaker. I didn't know I was going to write books. I didn't know my pictures would be so valuable at all. I had no concept of it. But I didn't miss the moment as life went by. Here's another photograph that you might say, well, surely, Brian, you figured out something here. Look at that Rembrandt lighting. Ooh, it's gorgeous. Didn't have a clue. Sitting in the ready room in Okinawa one day, commander said, Brian, it's your day off. Why don't you go up on the tanker over the South China Sea? It's pretty close. And see if you can get a picture or two. This, of course, was the same colonel that now had a beautiful picture on his wall. I said, well, sir, I think I will. And I went up. And if you've ever been in the back of a tanker, you're laying down on a cot with the boomer and you have to lean over and you can't even put your eye to the viewer of the camera. It's all manual focus in those days. And I didn't even know if I was focused. I thought, what the hell does that aperture thing do? I'll try smaller numbers this time. I tried big numbers last time. Took 2 shots, 2. Didn't have a clue. It's a masterpiece. And that showed me the value of not missing the moment. See the little fuel streaming out here? This jet used to grow 4 inches in flight due to the heat. So they had to build expansion joints into the jet so it leaked all the time when it was subsonic. When you got up to speed, supersonic, the jet sealed like Tupperware. You didn't lose a drop. I love that picture. I got 2 shots. I always only had 10 seconds. You have 10 seconds, so you get 2 shots. Leaving the tanker, passing 50,000 feet, the sky turns a very deep, dark blue, and you're above all that weather that you feared when you flew mortal planes. Leveling at 85,000 feet, you look out the window, it takes your breath away. I had a very small, little, tiny camera on a lanyard in my spacesuit pocket. People go, well, that had to be illegal. That had to be illegal carrying a camera. Guess what? I actually looked in the entire Strategic Air Command handbook of all the B-NOs. You know, they'll B-NO this, B-NO that. Not once in there did it say, hey, well, flying the world's fastest, most sophisticated spy plane, probably be a good idea not to have a camera in one hand while you're doing that. And I took that to mean, since I never saw that paragraph, that of course it'd be okay. They never addressed it at all, so I guess if you felt like you wanted to. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that our missions weren't serious and we had a lot of time to take pictures. Let's put some perspective in here. 7 years around the jet, I have 220 pictures. I have 6 in flight and are on training missions. So when we were flying real missions, things were pretty serious. Don't kid yourself. This is what the Arctic Circle looks like from 90,000 feet. One day we discovered from satellites that the Soviets had put new missiles up by the Arctic Circle. New missiles that we didn't know the capability of. And some general said, let's have an SR-71 mission up there. So Walt and I come to this briefing and says, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take an SR-71 and point it at their airspace. Make them think we're going to penetrate their airspace. The missile sites will come up. Guy in the back seat, record all that data. At the last minute, turn, come back home. We'll understand the capabilities of those missiles. Walt and I looked at each other and said, we just have one question. What if they don't know we're not going to penetrate their airspace and they fire one of these, we have no idea what they'll do, missiles at us? And just to show the confidence they had in this jet, he actually said, well, that's even better. We'll get launch data. Well, Walt and I actually did this mission. We went up over the polar cap. I saw 2 sunrises and 2 sunsets in one day. It was beautiful. Saw the moon and stars over the North Pole. Came back to England. Sun came up. We did this mission. Nobody shot at us. And 6 years later, every Navy and Air Force fighter pilot was armed with electronic countermeasures to counter those missiles now. We did a variety of different missions. We found a guy in the Pacific Ocean lost. He was trying to sail around the world. A hiker on Mount McKinley, nobody could find. We found him. We had some pretty serious optics on this jet. It was a 57 Chevy as a jet. It didn't change much, but the sensors did. One day I was looking in the rearview mirrors and I saw this incredible reflection in my visor. Now, don't ask me why we had rear view mirrors on the world's fastest jet. I can assure you no one was gaining on us. But you know what? I've already admitted to you what a big baby I was in the hospital today. I'll admit something else to you. I'd be flying along and I'd put the mirror on me and I'd pull my visor up just to see the scar tissue and go, you are not dreaming this, you're doing it. Because it was a little hard to fathom that 12 years earlier I was laying in a hospital bed screaming like a baby, and they'd give me drugs for pain that you couldn't tell reality from fantasy. And I thought, am I really doing this? And I'd look in the mirror. I didn't tell Walter I was doing those kind of things. He'd worry about me, and I know none of you will take this outside of this room, but it was amazing to me that I was even sitting in that seat. But the green visor, it actually looks better in the book. 10-second timer. And the jet was a jealous jet. It never gave you more than 10 seconds before a light would come on or something would happen up there. And people always ask me, well, what were your favorite missions? And I go, gosh, I could talk for an hour on that, but one was this one here. That's the coast of Southeast Asia. And Walt and I got to fly over the very spot where I'd been shot down 12 years earlier. Don't think we didn't lay down some serious sonic boom that day. And you know, I don't know how many of you know this, but fighter pilots are just pretty cool people. And on Friday nights at the O Club, we used to always go in and have beer and talk to the other fighter guys. And you'd look at guys' patches on their arms, see who does what, F-15 guys, F-16, A-10 guys. And rarely did you ever see M3+, because nobody could wear a Mach 3 Plus patch except us. And one day my instructor took me in, I was in training, and we went into the officers club. And we're standing there, and there's my ex-students, people I had trained in the A-10, making fun. Oh, what'd you do today, Shul? What'd you do? Did you fly straight and level again? Because they knew we didn't have a gun. We didn't, I'm doing well, I guess so, you know. I didn't know what to say. My instructor was very cool. He goes, we did Nebraska in 4.5 minutes today. And it just kind of shut everybody up. And folks, that's the best way to do Nebraska, by the way. We took a jet from Sacramento to London, 3 hours, 45 minutes. Delta, eat your heart out. 4 hours, 20 minutes from London to LA. Saw the sun come up over Iceland. I saw the northern lights at 3 in the morning flying over Canada. Unbelievable sights, some of which I could never ever get on film to show you. I wish I could. And sometimes we'd issue prayers to Him who holds all of us in His hands. And we always thought prayers got to heaven a little faster from 90,000 feet, which was a very good thing. Coming back into land by Mount Lassen, it's a beautiful jet to fly up next to in the T-38. Absolutely gorgeous. And guys would always say, what, you want another picture? Yet I got a lot of heat for carrying the camera around. Now, I don't know why I was doing it. I was doing it because it was my passion, my hobby. Like I said, I didn't imagine for the next 30 years I'd be a speaker, go all over the world, be an inspirational speaker, have a slideshow that was so rare, nobody has those pictures anymore. I never thought of any of that stuff. But I'm glad I didn't miss the moment to get those shots. Now, if you want more than your 15 minutes of fame, you be an SR-71 pilot. You take your jet to a major air show where there's 100,000 people. You fly in the show. You light your burners in their face. You land at the show. Stand in front of the jet. You are a sky god. And that's exactly how you felt. People would come up and stare at the jet like they're meeting the Pope. Then they'd stare at you like they couldn't speak to. They go, hey, we're just regular Air Force pilots. They go, oh God, they spoke. It's like, people love undefeated first in class. We love that. That's what this jet was. I got to do a bunch of air shows, which was really fun. I opened up the Reno Air Races one year, and I think I pretty much won my heat. This jet brings me to point number 2. Perspective. Sometimes we lose perspective what we're doing in life. We forget how good we have it. And I remember very distinctly teaching at Top Gun, and one day Billy Bob brings a newspaper article in and says, hey, now you gotta remember, we're tired, we're up at 4 in the morning, we're flying twice a day, teaching class, our students are trying to kill us, and we're just getting beat to death. But we're living the dream, but we forgot that. Billy Bob brings in a newspaper article that says a trash collector in San Francisco makes more money than a captain fighter pilot in the Air Force. And it was true. Sanitation department guy made more money than a captain flying A-10s in the Air Force. And we thought, well, that is wrong. That can't be. And we started having an attitude problem. And the colonel got real tired of it. He called us in Friday, said, no flying today, down day, in the briefing room. Ooh, you could hear a pin drop. Got in that briefing room and he said, okay. And he called us a name that started with A and ended with holes. He said, I'm only going to say this once. There are 29,000 doctors in New York City alone. One city, 29,000 doctors. There are 4,000 of you in the entire world. Anybody who wants to be a trash collector, you just raise your hand. I will make it happen. Because there's 8,000 young men at that front door who want to take your place. And we all looked at Billy Bob like, how could you be so stupid as to bring an article like that in? I don't want to be a trash collector. We're not here for the money. We never were. We're living the dream. We're doing this because we love it. And we had forgotten that. And if I can forget that at Top Gun, you can forget that in your daily life. And I was standing under the wing of this jet at that very air show. And who do you think is standing next to me? Ben Rich, the man who helped build the airplane, the guy that wrote Skunk Works, the #2 guy behind Kelly Johnson of Lockheed that designed and built the what makes this airplane go so fast, the inlet system. The giant of the industry is standing next to me in a short sleeve shirt talking like we're best buddies. I got my camera in my hand and going, well, Ben, we talked for 30 minutes. And when we were done, he said something to me I'll never forget. He said, Brian, I really envy you. And I go, you envy me? He said, you get to sit up there every day and feel what Mach 3 feels like. You get to light those burners, sit in front of those J-85s. He says, you get to feel it. He says, I built the airplane, never got a flight in it, and I was sick the day I was supposed to. You think I ever flew that jet again with the same perspective? I'm thinking, suit that man up, put him in the jet tomorrow. Sometimes we forget. Sometimes we forget we're not laying in a burn ward right now. Sometimes we forget that, as bad as things are, maybe not so bad. Maybe we're really doing the things we want to be doing. If you flew the Blackbird, you also flew baby jets, the T-38, and that's how I got a lot of these photos in chase, because we used it as a chase aircraft. Here over Lake Tahoe, camera boy couldn't resist the beautiful little white jet. This kept you current in instruments and formation flying, which was very helpful for air refueling. The real reason we had the jet with us was for safety chase. Here, the SR-71 is dumping fuel. It has an emergency immediately after takeoff. T-38 is going to offer a safety assist. We just happened to be airborne that day, and somebody just happened to have their camera with them, got a rare shot of the two jets together. There's the Sutter Buttes off the nose of the jet, and that's Beale Air Force Base. You'll never see a lot of shots like that. This is the one photograph I'm going to show you today where I'm going to say that is a good picture. Somebody figured out what the word aperture meant. I'm in focus. My buddy's jet is in focus. Mammoth Lakes is in focus. Oh yeah. My last week in the Air Force, did a little self-portrait as a gift to myself. We didn't have the term selfies back then. It was just a self-portrait. Got a cable release on my camera so I could have my arm down. It was that's a terrific shot. It took me 25 years to learn how to do that, but I did it. Some company in New York City picked it up and said, oh, do you have any other photos? We'd like to do a book or a puzzle or something. That's really great. And all of a sudden, doors were being opened for the one guy in the squadron who didn't want to fly for American Airlines. Everybody wanted to fly for American when they closed down the squadron. I didn't. And I always thought that was ironic that the one guy who didn't, doors were starting to open for his writing and photographic career. That same year, they retired the SR-71. It was going away in 1990. They said, that's it, budget. We could still fly it for 10 more years, but we're going to put the money into satellites and drones and other stuff. Very sad. sad situation. They started flying jets off of Beale Air Force Base to museums. 30 museums have this jet today. One by one they left, and there came a very sad day when the last jet departed, and we realized we were saying goodbye to a legend. I would have taken more pictures that day, but tears welled up in your eyes as you realized this was the end of an era we'd never see the likes of. Every Soviet MiG fighter pilot knew that profile, wanted to be first to shoot one down. When Viktor Belenko defected to this country, he said, "We could not understand how your decadent capitalist Mickey Mouse society could build a jet in the 60s that we could not shoot down in the 90s. And the general got right in his face like a baseball umpire and very, very calmly said, "Victor, that's what you can do in a country where men are free." Viktor Belenko got it, became an American citizen. They said, "Now that you live in the United States, what would you like to see?" He said, "Only two things, Disneyland and an SR-71 up close." We thought, yeah, pal, that's the closest you ever came to one. Leaving Air Force history, passing through the gates of legend, the jet sits proudly, if not quietly, in 30 museums today. 29 in the U.S., 1 in England. 1962, they built this jet. As you're sitting here today on the cusp of 2019, that jet still holds every speed and altitude record, has never been surpassed. I got out of the Air Force, I had all these photographs. I wanted to do something to honor the jet. I said, well, I would like to write a book. And what do you think happened? All the no people appeared. You can't write a book, you're not a publisher, you don't know what you're doing, you're just a fighter pilot. In fact, you ought to be at American Airlines because that's all you know how to do is fly jets. You know? You're a fool, you're gonna go broke, you're stupid, you're gonna stay in Marysville. And I just run over them. I was a teenager by now in my second life. I was like 16, so of course I knew everything. And me and a couple guys sat down, ate peanut butter sandwiches for a couple of years, and took out a loan, and we did a book called Sled Driver, which is very proud of. And we thought about 2,000 people would enjoy it or like it, and those copies sold so fast. We didn't realize the whole world was in love with this airplane. And as I'm standing here today, 30 years later, it is now the single most popular book in the world on the jet. We've done 2 books now. And we only print a very limited number each year. If you go on the internet tonight, you'll see them for $400, $500, $600 books. If they're signed, it's $1,000. I have the signatures. It's incredible. We're doing a book signing today when you're done in support of Wounded Warrior. And the books are $235, a price you will never, ever see on them anywhere. You can't buy them in bookstores, you can't get them on Amazon, unless it's a used $400 copy. So I did bring some, and I'll be very happy when they're done, come back to the table, take a look. Also, when the jet turned 50, Lockheed or nobody, I forgot to tell you, there's still a couple photographs that you may not see in the book. So Lockheed and nobody did a 50th anniversary commemorative. We did a gold coin piece. We did 3,000 of them for Mach 3. We have, I think, about 50 left. I brought everything we have left here today, so if you're a collector, the coin is worth $60 and the gold that's in it, we sell them for 50. I thought I had a picture of it, I'm sorry. I'm always going to be, because of the internet, I'm always going to be associated with this airplane. I'm always going to be the sled driver guy, no matter what else I do. And that's okay. That's all right, because I've gone on to do other things. I flew with the Air National Guard for a while, doing a picture project for them. I did my last flying with the Portland Air National Guard in the F-15 Eagles here over Mount Hood. Call this Eagles in the Hood. I don't fly anymore now. I gave up all my flying to concentrate on my nature photography. And people go, how could you do that? Well, it centers me to be out there. I lived through 25 years of flying, 5,000 hours of scaring myself. Almost killed myself 100 times, and now I'm out there enjoying the natural beauty with 2 feet on the ground. And what I found was, as a flyer, I was most impressed with nature's flyers. A simple seagull that you normally would ignore has such an elliptical wing that it gives it such agility and speed. And the decals and paint schemes that Mother Nature puts on her flyers is so phenomenal as to almost look fake. who can take their eyes off a bald eagle in a flight? It's just the majesty and the concentration and the proud look on the face of that bird. And as an aviator, we have to appreciate the butterfly migration, like the monarchs that go from Canada to Mexico every year in a navigational feat we still don't understand. It's a phenomenal bit of flying. And who can not fail to be amazed at all the aerodynamic forces going on when that egret plucks a minnow from that pond? So as an aviator, I've spent the last 15, 16 years shooting birds and just loving it, because I realized we don't really fly. Man doesn't fly. We build machines that fly, and we sit in them. Birds really fly, and I'll tell you, when you watch them for any length of time, it's an amazing experience. People always say, well, no matter what else you're doing, Brian, that had to be the apex of your life right there. That had to be the doesn't get any better than that moment in your life. Well, I'll tell you, very proud of that. We brought the Berlin Wall down. We kicked commies' ass. We did some good things. We won the Cold War. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, the President himself was looking at our work. Yeah, very proud to be one of 93 men that got to do that. You bet. Not, my doesn't get any better in that moment. Number two. Number one was when I was standing on the top steps of that hospital, and that blue car was waiting down there. That was like you were getting a do-over. You were getting a second chance at life. And I had to make a choice. My third main point, choices. I had to make a choice. At that moment, I was terrified. I was underweight. I didn't know if I could still fly anymore. And they were going to throw me right back into the fire. And I thought, I have to get enough courage and make that choice to go back, because the other road is a dead end. And as I stood there, knowing that 19,000 young men went to Vietnam and never saw the age of 21, never lived their dream, pursued their passion, never made it to 21 years old. And I'm getting a do-over at 24. I get to start over and get a second chance. And isn't that all we can ask in life, is the opportunity? And what we do with that opportunity is the saga of our life. And I made that choice. It was the harder choice. It wasn't easy. It doesn't mean you'll be successful. It doesn't mean it'll all work out real easy. Oh no, but that's what makes it all worthwhile. Now, before I open the floor to questions and finish up today, there's a little story going around the internet that I must address, called the LA Speed story. Many of you have dared to send that to me in your emails, which I immediately delete. Because I have to write back to 20,000 people a week and say, hey, I wrote that story. It's in my book. I'm the guy. You don't need to tell me about this cool story you just heard. And what I find is a lot of times they tell the story wrong. So I'm going to tell you the story today, so you are armed and fully capable to go out in the world and correct people on the LA Speed story. And if you haven't heard it, you will. And the way that this story started is so perfect and so ironic. I would have never told this story ever. But I was doing a show in Seattle many, many years ago, over 25 years ago. And it was space camp for the kids. And a 12-year-old boy in shorts and a t-shirt that said space camp, I always remember, he was sitting like right over there, brown hair, and he was just 12. And you know what his question was? Wasn't it ever just fun? You didn't talk about fun. You said it was difficult and scary and dangerous and high level and really intense and all. And that's exactly the question you'd expect a 12-year-old to ask. I know, I was 12 twice. And I love that kid for asking that question, because it made me think, well, when was it just fun? And I thought of this story. And now the story has circled the globe a billion times, and it's, I can't get away from it. So I'm going to tell it to you so you know the real story. Was it ever fun? Yes, it was. One day, Walter and I were doing a little training mission around the United States, where you take off out of Sacramento, hit a tanker in Idaho, rip on up to Montana, zip across Denver, hang a right turn to Santa Fe, out over Los Angeles, up to Seattle, back into Beale, 2 hours. 28 minutes. And then you do it backwards just to gain time. You're just getting hours, a couple of refuelings. In 2 weeks, they're going to turn you loose to fly real missions. You're all done with your training. We're feeling pretty darn good about ourselves. We made the turn in New Mexico. I'm over Tucson, and I can see downtown LA from Tucson. I can see the whole western coast of the United States bathed in a warm glow of an October afternoon. The radios are quiet, not a gauge moving in my cockpit, smooth as silk air. We're at 89,000 feet, Mach 3.1, knocking cactus over 18 miles high. And I'm thinking, we bad. And I feel sorry for Walter because he has to monitor 5 radios in the back seat. So I flipped the switch up just to listen. In LA Center, controlling all the bug smashers and mortal planes below us. Centers are all over the country for those of you that don't fly there. Seattle Center, Dallas, Fort Worth Center, LA Center, Jacksonville Center, Chicago Center. And they control all the flying. And in those days, we didn't have GPS, so every Cessna guy wanted to know his ground speed so that he could figure out his position, I guess. Sure enough, LA Center, Cessna November Alpha Tango, have you got a ground speed readout for us? Now, here's the cool thing about Center. You could be Joe Bag of Donuts on your very first flight. Doesn't matter. He's going to talk to you like you're John Glenn. Centers talk to you like you're really somebody. And it's all the same guy. I'm convinced it's the same guy all over the country. And here's how they talk. And I'm not making this up. Those of you that fly, you know this is true. Cessna November Alpha Tango, we show you 90 knots, 90 knots on the ground. I swear to God, that's how they talk. And we like it. And right after that, a twin Bonanza popped up to pimp the guy with speed, I guess. LA Center, Twin Beach, or whatever. You got a ground speed readout for us? Now, Center would like to say, hey, pal, get off freak. Who cares? It's Friday afternoon. Get off. But he's not going to say that. He's going to talk to him like he's Air Force One. Twin Beach, and we show you 120, 120 knots on the ground. And right after that, a Navy F-18 out of Lemoore popped up on frequency. And you knew it was a Navy guy because he talked really slick on the radio. Center Dusty 5-2 speed check. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. Dusty 5-2 has a ground speed indicator in that $1 million F-18 cockpit. In fact, it's right here in the heads-up display in front of his fat Navy face. Why is he calling Center to broadcast his speed? I get it. We are just the meanest, baddest, fastest military jet in the valley today. We're taking our little Hornet jet over Mount Whitney, ripping across Death Valley, and we want everyone from Fresno to the coast to know what real speed is. And you can almost hear a little glee in the controller's voice, like, yeah, we've put an end to this now. It's just that little Dusty 5-2, we show you 620, 620 knots across the ground. And it was that across the ground, it was different, like, we've put an exclamation point on that, no more. It was just unspoken. There wasn't an airliner from Seattle to San Diego, one to be next on frequency. There was a hush on the radio. And a 12-year-old was reaching for the mic button. And I thought, oh no, Walter's in charge of the radios. I flew single seat all my life. I'm in the family model now. We have a division of... No, it's the Navy. They must die. They must die now. I thought, no, but if I do that, he'll be upset. I want us to be a good crew. He's the radio guy now. At that moment, I heard a click of the mic button in the back seat. Ladies and gentlemen, Walter and I became a crew at that moment. In his very best innocent voice. LA Center, Aspen 30, have you got a ground speed readout for us? You could almost hear a silent collective gasp of everyone on freak, like, oh, the poor fools, they didn't hear the previous transmissions, they'll be crushed. Oh, wow, idiots. Who could that be? The Center had to give you that same voice. Aspen 30, we show you 1,987 knots. When I knew I was really going to like Walter a lot, is when he came back and said, Center, thanks, but we're showing a little closer to 2,000. Ladies and gentlemen, we did not hear another transmission on that frequency all the way to the coast. So for just a moment, It was fun. The Navy had been flamed. The King of Speed lived. And a crew had been formed. And I've always been thankful that that 12-year-old asked that question, because little did I know it would be on my tombstone someday. So what do combat hardened, Commie fighting fighter pilots do when they retire? I shoot pansies now. And, very proud of that. I'm opening a gallery in Marysville of my aviation and nature birds, flowers, butterflies in about another year, 2020. And our motto, see if you're following along here, our motto is from butterflies to blackbirds. Get it? Okay, so if you get the motto, you'll get our logo. Pretty cool. Very cool. It took us 2 years to come up with that. And the reason is we kept forgetting butterflies have 4 wings. We kept putting 2 wings on the butterfly and thought, it just doesn't look right. And then my girlfriend put up and he says, well, where's the other 2 wings? And we go, oh my God, that's right, they have 4 wings. Boom. And it was instantly a success. Little treat for you today. I got a little video clip for you for coming out on a holiday week. A lot of you understand what I'm saying today about attitude, perspective, choices we make in life. A lot of you have had your own experiences in life where you don't need me to even tell you any of those things. But I want you to remember that there's going to be another time in all of our lives where we're going to have a challenge again. We're going to have a wall we have to get over, through, around, or over somehow. And we don't know how. And when you come to that barrier, I want you to remember this little story. I want you to remember that one day an SR-71 took the runway at Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. Swung that long black nose out of taxiway Alpha, settled down on the runway for 30 seconds, waiting for its official takeoff time. And the pilot of the jet that day could look out the little window on a 153-degree heading for 2.3 miles. He could see the roof of the hospital he had laid in 12 years earlier. Legend has it that on takeoff that day, the airplane did not climb straight out over the South China Sea to hit the tanker. Oh no. Made a hard 90 left turn at the end of the runway in full burner, 250 feet. Some say much lower. Buzzed a certain soccer field, sending kids screaming and running, falling down. Rattled every window at a certain hospital without breaking one. As that big black jet made an arc back to course, it was as if all things had come full circle for that pilot at that moment, and he could understand for the first time events that had transpired in his life that he couldn't possibly understand at the time. And he knew right then that Einstein was right when he said imagination is far more valuable than knowledge. So for those of you that said you knew the words, a little Christmas treat for you. On its final flight, the SR-71 flew from Palmdale, California to Dulles Field at the Varhese Smithsonian Air and Space Museum, traversing the country in 64 minutes, setting 8 official speed records before they put the jet to bed. A remarkable flight for a jet they're putting in a museum. When Judy Garland says, if bluebirds can fly, why oh why can't I? Brian Shul says you can. So I will do a very scary thing and open the floor for questions for just a couple minutes, since you've been such a good audience to come out.